So this is Gravity, starring Sandra Bullock and George Clooney. I was really looking forward to this after seeing all the trailers. It's a really kind of interesting kind of concept. I always like these sort of stranded in the middle of nowhere kind of stories, and I haven't seen one that explores that idea in space before. I've never seen a film that explores that kind of idea where it would be extremely difficult to survive on your own, and probably in reality would actually be impossible. But that's why films exist. Sadly, I would have to say that this is kind of sort of one of those films, which is kind of like Titanic or Life of Pi or Castaway, even to a lesser extent, or even Avatar, in that it has great effects and it looks amazing and everything. The critics love it, I suppose, really just because of the effects, and how good it looks like visually. But the story really has nothing particularly interesting going for it. There's nothing particularly original about it. There's nothing particularly mind-blowing about it that really gets you thinking or anything. It's just kind of a standard sort of stranded in the middle of nowhere, trying to reunite with civilization kind of story, really. It doesn't really attempt to do anything more than that. But this, unlike like Avatar or Castaway, this at least doesn't, try to force any kind of whimsical moments on you. There's no like kind of big long speeches or a character looking upon something in awe or finding some kind of new revelation about their life or something or anything like that. It is kind of what these kinds of stories really should be, which is just beginning with the characters becoming stranded and then ending with them returning to civilization. But yeah, visually this film is absolutely spectacular. It really does look like they're in space. The effects are amazing. I don't know if it's completely true to science, whether so a lot of the sort of hitting things, colliding with things, spinning around all over the place kind of things. I'm not sure if all of those things would actually happen in reality, but it's a film. I think we as the public, with our knowledge of the physics of space, kind of, that I think we're pretty much willing to accept what happens in this film. One thing that annoyed me in the early part of this film, I think, certainly, is first of all there's a bit of stuff before the actual disaster happens that causes them to become stranded, and the whole time, we've all seen the trailer. The whole time I'm watching, I'm just like, can we just get to them being stranded, please? We're not really learning anything particularly interesting about these characters or what they're doing, other than, I suppose, Sandra Bullock's character is less experienced as an astronaut than George Clooney's character. That's about it, really. And obviously there's an explanation as to why the disaster happened. But other than that, there's nothing, really. The thing that annoyed me right after that is they keep talking about how Ryan, Sandra Bullock's character, her oxygen level is, really, really low, like not even sort of noticeably low, like drastically low, like it could run out at kind of any second. I think she said it was like 8% or something, and then, a couple of minutes later it was 5%. So if it's going down that fast, she has like probably about 5 minutes to live almost. But no, it's actually quite a while after she says that she finally gets into a space station and is able to breathe the air within that space station at last. So it's way too long, really, for me to be willing to accept it. If she said something like, it's at 24% or something, and it had started going down, at a slightly slower rate or something, perhaps I would have been willing to accept how long it was before she finally got into the space station and was able to breathe the air inside there. The fact that it's like 8% and it's such a long time. In fact, I think it runs out quite a while before she goes into the space station. And he says something about how, she's using the air in her suit. And then there's quite a long period after that where they're running around, being knocked around by different things. And she's breathing quite heavily. This is all on the air inside her suit. I don't know. I don't know how space technology works or anything. But, after talking about how quickly it was going down before, I would kind of sort of finding that a bit difficult to accept, really. The way that George Clooney's character dies, that was quite effective, really. Again, it's one of those kind of cliched, kind of have to choose between, what is logically the sensible option, which is giving yourself a chance to survive, but sacrificing somebody else's life in return. You can't bring yourself to do it, sort of morally. And some people sort of say that that's kind of stupid. Why would she not want to let him go? I mean, it's a choice between neither of them surviving and her surviving, basically. But I suppose it's more about, morally she just can't bring herself to do it. But, we've kind of seen that in a lot of films. This film really doesn't do it any differently from how films have done it in the past. And in the end, George Clooney's character actually makes the decision for her, so there's nothing sort of morally in that at all either. Other than that, honestly, I only saw this film a few hours ago. I'm trying to sort of remember anything particularly interesting that happens after that. She goes into the space station. She, tries to salvage the situation by saying, she's going to go and get him. That never goes anywhere. She tries to then take off for the Chinese space station. I didn't know China had a space station, but there you go. Can't do that because she's caught on the parachute, and so logically she goes out and tries to disconnect. This sort of thing that a lot of these type of films do, which I don't really like, which is just the writer saying, she's in kind of a sort of perilous situation here. Let's have something really annoying and awkward to make the situation even worse come along. They just decide that Deborah's going to come along now and make the situation even worse for her. We've already got her in a perilous situation. You don't need to make it any more perilous. It's kind of just annoying me, really. It's kind of sort of stretching what you can accept, really, as an audience, I think. You've got this one thing which is difficult enough, then we're going to throw a ton of other things on top of that just to make the situation nigh on impossible. But of course, she still survives. Obviously, she survives all of that, and she's able to make it to the Chinese space station. The way she comes up with the idea of using some of the fuel for landing is kind of weird. She goes into this kind of weird fantasy where George Clooney's character comes back, and we as the audience are led to believe that it's real while it's going on. Which kind of annoyed me, but at the same time I was kind of relieved when I saw that it wasn't real, because that really would have been pushing my suspension of disbelief, I think, to think that George Clooney's character actually would have been able to survive and come back. I guess George Clooney just wanted some more screen time. So I'm not quite sure what's supposed to be going on there, if she has just had a brainwave and she's like, that's something that he taught me or something, or it's like he's still with her in spirit or something, I don't know. There's also some really sort of weird moments that seem like they're just trying to fill time, really. Like there's a moment where she's listening to Chinese radio and is howling like a wolf. I have no idea what that's about. Then there's quite a bit after she returns to Earth. I'm thinking like maybe they're saying, she's not out of the woods yet, she has to return to civilization. No, the film just ends. Yeah, the film could have actually gone on a little bit longer than it had. Where the film ends kind of makes me wonder why it didn't end a little bit earlier, when actually it could have also gone on a little bit later, if that makes any sense. If they just ended it with her surviving re-entry, or they've ended it with her returning to civilization. In the end, they end it somewhere in between those two things. It's kind of a weird point to end it, but whatever. This is like a lot of 3D films. I saw this film in 3D, by the way. The 3D is kind of cool for the first 10 minutes, and then you stop noticing it, really. The novelty of it has kind of worn off, and you actually start watching the film, and it's really not particularly interesting, to be honest. Nothing particularly interesting about either of the two characters in it. I like the idea, actually, of a film being carried by one actor, or two actors in this case, for almost the entire film. But to be honest, they don't really do anything particularly interesting. They're in their spacesuits for the most part, so all their acting is done through radio and behind a pane of glass. So, there's nothing for them really to act out. There's one point actually where I wonder if it's maybe a homage to 2001: A Space Odyssey, because obviously a lot of the effects in this are similar to what was introduced in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and obviously it's a somewhat similar concept to the whole thing with Dave and Hal. But the thing they make reference to is the space fetus. There's one part where Sandra Bullock's character she looks like she's trying to sort of look like the space fetus that we see at the end of that film. That could be a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, or I could just be seeing things, who knows. But yeah, not a bad film by any means. The effects are nice, a somewhat interesting story, but it's kind of uninspired, really. It doesn't really try to do anything particularly spectacular or anything particularly interesting, really. I like that they don't really force any kind of whimsical moments on you, although the score in this and the music they have in here is kind of annoying at times, the way they try to be overly dramatic. I think actually this film could have been a lot more effective with no score at all. The thing I liked about Castaway actually was the fact that the whole time he's on the island there is no score. It can sort of try and force the drama or the whimsy on you. It really isn't necessary. You can just let the pictures tell the story, really. And that is another problem with this film. It's not a terrible film. If you like effects, you'll probably enjoy it. Yeah, probably a 6 out of 10, I would say, really, because it doesn't really try to do anything particularly spectacular. So yeah, that is Gravity, guys. So I will see you again soon for another film review.